Okay, class, this is the lecture for Tuesday, October 6th. I'm a little off of my dates because, as you know, I'm out of town moving one of my kids. So I'm going to have to miss the live sessions Monday, Tuesday, but I'm back in person on Wednesday. Now, I know we don't have live sessions Wednesday, but if I struggle to answer any Gmails, any of the comments in the Google Classroom stream Monday, Tuesday, I don't know how good of internet I'm going to have where I'm going. So hopefully I got back to you, but if not, Wednesday would be, I would think, when I would get back to you. Remember, the videos are still posting every single day. Class is still moving forward. I'm still grading papers. So everything is normal except for your one live session. Okay, with that said, let's jump into amendments 2 through 4. There's really a lot of stuff in here, but there's not a ton to write down. So let me share screen the notes. Maybe. There we go. Okay. And I'll just do a quick reminder yesterday. Now, there's a worksheet coming up on Thursday that's going to review all of this, all of these amendments in the Bill of Rights. And then there'll be a different one that reviews all the amendments, all 27 of them. But for now, we're going to focus on the first 10 amendments known as the Bill of Rights. And yesterday, we just did the one. And if it seems like 25 minutes is a long time to talk about one amendment, again, if you go to law school, you have a whole class, maybe two, just on this. Freedom of religion, speech, press, and assembly. Also to redress grievances. These are all things in the First Amendment, but all of these rights have a limit. Until the tip of the next person's nose. Look at it as the right to swing your arm until the tip of the next person's nose. So yes, you have freedom of religion, but you cannot practice a religion that sacrifices people to whatever God you believe in. You have freedom of speech until a certain point where your speech endangers other people, or this maybe you're screaming profanities at me that might be disrupting the peace. So let's pick up on the Second Amendment. It's the easiest one to write down, but boy, is it full of controversy. The right to bear arms. So in other words, the right to own a gun. Now, again, I don't know if I've made this clear yet. All of these rights, all of them, according to basically the judicial system currently, every American holds all of these rights, but technically speaking, anybody under 18, those rights are held for you by your parents. Okay? So I know you're a valuable person and you mean as much as any adult, but in the eyes of the law, it's much clearer if you're 18 and over. So we're just going to pretend everybody's 18 and over. Okay, the right to bear arms. You have the right to own a gun. All right, simple enough, right? Straightforward. It was for a long time. It really was. Then the technology got different with guns. And then some people said, nope, it's still clear cut. You can own whatever you want. And other people said, no, hold on. Some of these guns are definitely hitting the tip of the next person's nose. Let me give you some examples. Oh, it's hidden under there. We'll come back. We will come back to these other amendments, but I'm not worried about them at the moment. The question is, basically, are we comfortable with both of these types? Now, I can make some pretty unique arguments here. And I really, again, this is the sort of thing I wish you were here in the room talking to me about, because I'm interested in hearing your opinions. And again, your opinions and my opinions have the same value. It can affect how we vote, but really, ultimately, the judicial branch, Supreme Court in particular, is going to lay down some pretty heavy decisions on this stuff. And those people's opinion for this sort of thing matters the most. All right. If you have the right to own a gun, do I have the right to own either of them? Well, first off, I'll say that the Supreme Court's made it pretty clear that if I commit a felony, they may restrict my right to own a gun. Minors may not have that right to own a gun. It kind of varies from state to state. So again, let's just assume we're all 18 and older and we don't have a criminal record. Can I fit that category as far as you know. I'm over 18 and I don't have a criminal record. Can I own both of these? Well, I can't own this one. And the argument is that the amount of damage that can be done by that 50 caliber machine gun is just too much. That if somebody has a mental breakdown and has a gun like that, I mean, we all have read the news, seen the stories where unfortunately people get a hold of weapons and they lash out at the world. Well, the more powerful that weapon is, the more chaos and damage they can inflict. And it's certainly bad enough with the weapons that are legal. So we wouldn't do this. Now, currently as the law is written, if you have a gun, even like this, that's semi-automatic, meaning the gun fires as fast as you can pull the trigger, those in many states are legal. Now, if it's like this one where you just hold down the trigger and it just fires, that's illegal. So I think, I don't know where you would draw that line. I think most of us probably think, well, the line has to at least be there. Now, in virtually every state, this gun is legal. Again, certain restrictions and requirements, but that gun is pretty much legal for me to buy. I'll throw the argument out there. And by the way, I want to reiterate, my opinion on this means no more than your opinion, no less, no more. But I could make the argument that this gun might be more dangerous than that gun. And some of you off the top of your head are going to go, are you insane? Have you ever seen, like even in video games, they show you the difference between how these guns fire. Yep, I understand that. I do understand that. Here would be my argument. Totally understanding how much more powerful this weapon is. If I'm someplace like, at a park, okay, or something like that, and I see someone starting to set up a tripod with that gun on it, I'm out. I am gone. I have some warning. No one is going to, it seems unlikely, sneak up on me with this one. What makes this gun so dangerous is that virtually anybody could be holding it at any time, concealing it, and then the potential victims of a crime don't know until it happens. That's argument number one. Argument number two, Google how many accidental shooting deaths occur every year, and you will be shocked that the number's in the thousands. And a lot of times, it has to do with handguns. This particular model, 9mm, the bullets go in the handle here, the little clip. I'm sure you've seen it in the movies where people, do the cool thing where they flip out the clip and then put another one in. The action star does that. There are lots of stories where people pull out that clip and then think the gun is, there's no ammunition in it, but there's still one in the chamber. And so, because it keeps one of the bullets, the very one that's pushed up to the top by that clip. And so then they play around with it and fire and shoot themselves or somebody that they had no intention of harming. And so there's just, and kids, the number of kids who do this. So then we get into the questions of, okay, should we put restrictions like saying, okay, if you have kids in the house, should it have to be a gun safe? I don't know. Now there's a group called the National Rifle Association, and just by the name, the NRA, but the National Rifle Association, you should know that they are fighting to say, absolutely, stop putting restrictions on guns, we want to own them. And then there are other groups that they're not as well organized, a singular group, but there are a lot of different groups that believe, that gun rights should be limited. We should make it harder for people to get guns. There is no right or wrong answer on this one. There are smart people on both sides. But if I put something on the test like, well, what would the National Rifle Association want? You should be able to put, or which amendment are they most concerned about? You should be able to put together, it's the Second Amendment. I'm sure every group is concerned about every amendment, but anything with the word rifle in it, Second Amendment, because that has to do with guns. But there's a lot of interesting laws going on with this right now. Could we require somebody with little kids in the house to have a gun safe? Currently, no. The courts say, nope, you can't require that. It would probably be a good idea. It would be a good idea, but it's not required by the law. There's something called a trigger lock, which is basically a very inexpensive plastic lock that goes right in here. And so it kind of freezes it so the gun trigger can't be pulled. A lot of people who would like to see those required, currently not done. There's a really cool technological feature that right here where your thumb would go across has like a little ID scanner. And these set up so that, let's say in my situation, if I bought one of these, it would make it so that only my thumb would release the gun to be able to fire. It's like an electronic trigger lock. And maybe I could program it so just my wife and I. So if a little kid were in my house and picked it up and was playing with it because I was irresponsible with where I left it, they couldn't fire it and hurt themselves. Now, a lot of people like this, but it actually makes the gun cost about $400 more. So who would say that's not fair? The National Rifle Association would say, we think that's unconstitutional to make people put that on there because it takes the right to own a gun out of people who have less money. You know, if maybe you could afford the gun before that, but now that makes the gun too expensive, you're limiting the right to own a gun to people who have less money. Those are the sorts of issues out there with the Second Amendment. It's absolutely fascinating. It is really interesting stuff. And again, I keep wanting to say this. I don't devalue your opinion. My opinion and your opinion are worth the same. And we can debate this, and there's smart people on both sides of the issue. But ultimately, the judicial branch gets to judge or interpret where that line is. You could be in it someday. I think at 48, I'm probably not going to pursue a career as a judge, but you could. But that's who gets to decide to judge or interpret, and their opinion in this case means the most. There's going to be a lot of legislation over the next few years is still emerging about guns. It's a very active issue as the technology gets more and more advanced. So we'll follow that, and you keep an eye on that and see what's going on in your communities. And you know, some of you listening to this think you should be able to own that. That's fine. You can think that, and some think that you shouldn't be able to own either one. That's the beauty of America. You can believe either, and you won't go to jail. All right, but let's go to the Third Amendment. Now, this one's easy. This one's real easy. This comes directly out of the fact that during the Revolution, they passed, or right before the Revolution, excuse me, the British passed this thing called the Quartering Act. Quartering means to house and feed. And it basically said the British could put troops in any state or any colony, and you had to house and feed them if they wanted you to. So in theory, a regiment of soldiers could knock on your door, eat up all your food, and stay at your house for a week or something like that. We did not like that. So we put in the Third Amendment, no quartering or housing of troops, cannot be forced. I would say then it's such a boring amendment that it's just never used. Like there's a million court cases around the First and Second Amendment because it's sort of exciting stuff. The Third Amendment, good luck finding what they call case law, court cases about the Third Amendment. It never comes up. So that's why I think it's a boring amendment. My best friend since kindergarten happens to be a lawyer, and he says, maybe the Third Amendment's just so well written. That's why it's amazing. Okay, either way, I can't give you any great example where Ohio went into Penrose's house and said, "Ooh, how's the National Guard?" They don't do it. It just doesn't happen. The government cannot make you house and feed troops. Fourth Amendment, this one's big. This one is absolutely fascinating to me. It is always evolving. There's lots of court cases about that. And honestly, some of them involve young people. So let's talk about search and seizure. Essentially, you have to have a reasonable cause and real detail to get a warrant to search someone's house. The British had this thing, and again, all of these are in response to the British. The British government was doing things we thought were unfair. We were like, okay, the Anti-Federalists said, let's make these rules so that they won't be able to do this to us again. The British would just go, oh, Penrose, he's a troublemaker. Let's search his house. Oh, Mr. Nedgley, troublemaker, let's search his house. Mr. Birch, Mr. Martin, troublemakers, let's search their house. Without having specific evidence. Now the law, in response to that, hundreds of years ago, says that you got to have specific details. You got to have a reasonable cause. So let me give you a scenario. It's a ridiculous scenario, but I'll give you a scenario nonetheless. I want to pick on somebody today. Who am I going to pick on? I remember who I picked on yesterday. So today we'll go 7th period. Boy, I hope they're okay with this. Let's see. And we'll go Talea. All right. Talea, I'm picking on you today. It's a pretty ridiculous situation. I don't think anybody would think this is real. All right. Let's say Talea is accused of stealing an elephant, like a real live, like, you know, elephant, okay? Now, I don't think Talea would steal an elephant. I don't think she'd steal anything, but let's say she's accused of it. I'm the police officer who's convinced Talea has stolen the elephant. Now, I go to a judge and I say, here, I have to show you a few things here. And I go to a judge and I say, all right, I think this Talea lady, I think she stole an elephant. And the judge says, okay, well, what's your reasoning, Officer Penrose? And I go, she just seems like she's an elephant thief. Like I got that elephant thief vibe going with her. That's not evidence. I'm not getting that warrant. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Okay, so I come back. I'm allowed to come back. All right, I want that search warrant. I want to search Talea's house. I think she stole the elephant. All right, what's your cause? All right, I had her brother in class. He's sketchy. He's not, but we'll say that. He's sketchy. That's not probable cause. That's not probable cause at all. That's dumb. All right. I come back and I say, I want to search Talea's house for the missing elephant because I saw her walking around town like this. And if you've ever seen cartoons, the villains always walk around like that. No, you're not getting the warrant. Now, the next scenario I'm about to give you, some of you might get mad and say that's crazy. Let me explain it. So I'm following Talea. I'm allowed to on public roads, right? I'm allowed to follow. And I follow her to, I don't know, Sam's Club or something like that, someplace where you can buy a lot of groceries. And she buys 1,000 pounds worth of peanuts. And yep, sure enough, she takes them home. And I go to the judge. All right, I just saw Talea buy 1,000 pounds of peanuts. Clearly, she's feeding an elephant. They're going to give me the warrant. Now, some of you are going, that's crazy. What if Talea just really loves peanuts and she's just like laying in her living room going, yay, look at all the peanuts. That's fine. That is absolutely fine. But it's reasonable. All the other reasons I said, Talea just looks like an elephant thief, or Talea's brother was an elephant thief, or whatever I can come up with. None of that stuff is evidence. But if you buy 1,000 pounds of peanuts, it is entirely possible that you just love peanuts. But it's also plausible that you're trying to feed an elephant, which, by the way, I don't even know. I think somebody told me they don't really like peanuts. It's okay. It doesn't matter. That is reasonable. Like, judges don't have to be like dumb. They don't have to be like, I know it's possible that this, that, and the other, sure. But is it more likely that she's probably trying to feed an elephant? Absolutely. So I get the warrant. Now, here's all the detail in the world that matters. How detailed is that warrant? If the warrant says, I may look for an elephant anywhere where an elephant could reasonably be, versus you may search their entire house for any evidence of an elephant ever having been there or feeding an elephant. Those are two very different warrants. In the first warrant, I could only look where an elephant would fit. So basically, I can look in her backyard and her garage. I don't even know if she has a garage. It doesn't matter. In my world, Talea got a great garage that you can fit an elephant in. In the first warrant, where I'm only allowed to look for an elephant, I can't go through the house and the closets and all that stuff because an elephant can't fit in there. That's just all there is to it. A real life scenario that's a little bit closer, by the way, would be a stolen car. If I'm accused of stealing a car, you can look in my garage. You can't look in my closet because I can't jam a car. And Talea can't jam an elephant in a closet. If you can, you're sick. Okay, so if the warrant though is written the other way, where I'm allowed to look for any evidence of the elephant, So maybe receipts for more peanuts or something like that. Now I'm allowed to look through the closets, and I'm allowed to look through the kitchen cabinets. I'm allowed to look for any place where you could hide receipts or anything like that. That's a whole different warrant. And that just sort of depends on the judge. Now here's where it gets tricky. Let's see if we can work. So got my desk here. Okay? If I have a warrant to look for anything and I open up this drawer, and in this drawer, I don't find receipts for elephant, food or anything like that, but I find $1 million and a note that says, "Here's the money I robbed from the bank." Boy, Talia, you would do the worst bank robber ever. "Here's the money I robbed from the bank." Can she get in trouble for that? Under the first warrant, she could not. Under the second warrant, she could. And the reason is, under the first warrant, I wasn't allowed to look in the drawer. So if I do look in the drawer, even if I find something that's illegal, I'm not allowed to have looked in there, and they're just going to throw it away anyway. Now, in the second warrant, because even though I was looking for one thing, if I find another, but it reasonably could have been in the drawer, then I'm allowed. So again, a more likely scenario. I'm accused of stealing a car. And the warrant says I'm allowed to look for, the police officer is allowed to look for the stolen car or car parts. Now you can look in my closet. And if you look in my closet and you happen to find illegal drugs, then you can arrest me for the legal drugs. But if the warrant says you're only looking for a stolen car, you can only look in the garage or any place else a car could reasonably fit, and then you search my closet and you find illegal drugs. Cannot. They can seize the drugs because it's legal to have them, but you cannot be arrested for them because they were not allowed to have looked there. I hope that makes sense to you. It is, over the years, the courts have made this very, very specific, and it just seems like, wow, what a weird place to draw the line. But that's where the line is drawn. That's where they've decided that, okay, you have freedoms, but it only goes to a certain point. Now there are exceptions. Plain sight. If Talia is riding around on the elephant in her backyard, even if her backyard's fenced, if I see her riding around, I don't have to get a warrant. I see her, okay? Now, this happens sometimes. Like there was a story last summer about somebody driving down the turnpike, and they had their kids in the back seat, and the windows had fogged up, and the kids wrote "help me" on the back. That's probable cause. It's probable cause to search that car, and that car, unfortunately, had illegal drugs in it, like a lot, and they got caught because their kids wrote "help me" on the back, and that became probable cause because in plain sight somebody was asking for help. That's just how that works. Imminent danger. If if somebody's getting kidnapped on the street and then they pull them into a house, they don't have to get a warrant for that house. If they see it, it's happening right there. It's imminent danger. You got to save that kid right there, and that makes, I think, perfect sense for most people. So let's talk about the more real life scenarios. Let's talk a little bit about something that happens in colleges a lot, and we'll talk about that plain sight exception. So go to any college you can imagine. Oh, you know what? BG would never do this. We'll make it UT. And let's say at the University of Toledo, there's a big party going on. And this big party, first off, how are the cops ever going to be drawn to this big party to potentially make some arrests anyway? 90% of the time, it's probably loud noise. So there's a loud noise complaint. So the police knock on the door. Let's say it's a fraternity or sorority or just some kid's apartment. Doesn't matter. They knock on the door. Person opens up the door who is the renter or owner of the house. And they open up the door and they say, "Hello, officer. How can I help you?" And they say, "We've had a loud noise complaint. Everything okay here?" And then the person who owns the apartment or rents the apartment can say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll turn down the music." The officer might then say, "Boy, everything okay? It looks a little crazy in there. Do you mind if we look around?" You're welcome to say, "Sure, come on in." But you're also welcome to say, "I appreciate it, but the place is a mess. I don't feel comfortable." And you're allowed to say no. And you can close the door. Now, if you get called back, the police get called back a second or third time, this is where you're going to have a problem. But if we're talking about the first time, you could close the door. You could say, "I'm so sorry." But here's where kids get themselves, well, first breaking the law in the first place. So as you're closing the door, you're in this scenario, you're some irresponsible UT freshman, and the police are worried about underage drinking, and somebody knocks on the door, police knock on the door, and they say, hey, can we look around? And you go, no, 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 I'm not comfortable with it. But then somebody walks by the door. So the police see somebody walk by the door with a red Solo cup. Now, this red Solo cup could be empty. It could have water in it. It could have Kool-Aid in it. But it frequently has alcoholic beverages in it. So it is at that point reasonable. And because it's out there in the open, it's reasonable for the police officer to, unless that guy looks or girl looks really old, they look at that and go, oh, that kid could be 19 and that could be alcohol. We now have reasonable cause to go in. Now, what's crazy is that person could be 21 and it could be water, but it's reasonable to go check it out. And so that's how sometimes people get in, that the police legally get into a party. So it's just an example. One of the most famous cases is New Jersey versus TLO. That's a real court case in 1986. A young lady who happened to be 18 was smoking in a girl's bathroom in a high school. And the principal followed her in, smelled the smoke, and then seized her purse, then took her to the office to write her up, I imagine, and then dumped out her purse. And the contents of her purse also had illegal drugs in it and a list of people who owed her money because presumably she was selling illegal drugs. And she sued, and I believe it went all the way to the Supreme Court on the basis that the principal did not have probable cause to search her purse. Therefore, the evidence of, get her for the smoking cigarettes, but the evidence of the drugs and selling drugs and all that couldn't be used. The Supreme Court ruled that even if you're an adult, like an 18-year-old in high school, you're not treated the same way as an 18-year-old who's out. And so the Supreme Court said the school could kind of do what they wanted in that particular case, which, I mean, that's a big deal. That is a really big deal. So not only do you have to be grown to have the full protections, you really, in a lot of cases, need to be out of high school. Now, you will notice in every high school that I've ever seen, lockers, for example, they're not owned by you. They're owned by the school. So we don't have to mess around with that. Somebody can just go through every locker in the school anytime they want. It's a pain, but they could. It's not yours to search. Now, I get a locker in my room. Could they search mine? Well, I think I'd have a certain expectation of privacy, but it is owned by the school. So I don't know. I guess you know who'd have to decide that? A judge would have to judge or interpret that. Rights of the accused is what we're going to pick up on tomorrow. I would say that today, the most common court cases about search and seizure that are sort of cutting edge about where the line is drawn have to do with blood and urine. And in other words, the ability to search your body for evidence of things like drugs. And that is a very interesting line. It used to be that your car was an extension of your home and it couldn't be searched without a warrant. Today, it's a little edgy. Today, essentially, your car can be searched with a mobile warrant. Technically, they're getting a warrant, but it's like a lightning fast mobile warrant if you look suspicious. So I'll end today's notes on an experience I had with that. This is probably 10 years ago. National Honor Society induction happened in like April, and I was dressed up and went to that, and it ended at like 9 o'clock, and I was tired. I just wanted to get home, and I live in Norwalk, and I have to drive. At that time, because of where I lived, I drove through Monroeville to get home. And Monroeville is kind of known as has a little bit of a speed trap, and I was going the speed limit, at least I thought, and I knew, like as you come around this bend right out of town, you come up to Route 20 where the speed limit's 60, and I started going 60, but I didn't realize I was still in the part where it's 35. So I was going like way past the speed limit before it turned 60, and I got pulled over. So something you should know about Mr. P is I've never had a speeding ticket. I've been pulled over before, but I never had a speeding ticket. And I'm really cheap, and I don't want to pay $120 because I'm too dumb to realize that the speed limit 60 up there, not there. Okay, so I'm nervous. I'm not nervous because I have a dead body in the trunk. I'm nervous because I'm cheap and I don't want to pay $120. And I just wanted to get home because I was tired and I'd been at school a really long time. And so the officer, he's no dummy. He pulls me over and realizes I'm nervous. But in his mind, he's like, well, why is this guy nervous? And I'm giving him the old, well, I'm a teacher at Sandusky High. We have this National Honor Society thing. I was just trying to get home. I'm so sorry. And he goes, can we search your trunk? And I'm like, I'm going to be here forever. Now, my answer, there are some people, including some of my friends, who would say no. Not because they have anything to hide either, but because they're like, I don't like this. You have no reason to search my trunk. I'm going to say no. And what I'm going to tell you is the Supreme Court has ruled that you saying no, in many cases, is probable cause to search your car because you saying no seems weird, which is just this insane loophole. That does not work that way for your house. I, knowing that, said, sure. Just if that gets me home faster, there's nothing back there but a spare tire. We're good. And he goes, nah, that's okay. We're good. Watch the speed limit and sent me on my way. But he was testing me. If I say no, I guarantee you he searches that. And, and that's just the way that goes. So that's kind of where the Fourth Amendment is in real life. Tomorrow we'll talk about the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. It's the 5th and the 6th and the 8th that'll take a little bit longer. So hope everybody has a great day. Make sure you take notes on these. Remember, you're going to have a worksheet, not to mention a test later on that goes through, and you're going to have to pick out which amendment does what. All right, everybody have a great day.